Rookie season is in full swing. That means it's time to revisit our rookie wide receiver tiers. So let's just dive right in. Starting in tier 4, at the bottom of tier 4, it is Malachi Corley. And he is a player that I think is going to be very polarizing, along with the other players in tier 4, for what it's worth. But he's going to be polarizing because he's already been dubbed the next Deebo Samuel, right? People do it every year. They want to find who's the player that isn't a necessarily traditional wide receiver that can take handoffs, catch screens, and still be effective down the field. That is what everybody is, again, saying Malachi Corley can be. That's not necessarily what he was in college, though. In college, he was able to take handoffs, right? He was used very, very short intermediate routes. 0 to 8 yards, 0 to 9 yards was kind of his calling card, right? He was fantastic after the catch with screens. The dude was built like a bowling ball, and all of that is why people say he's the next Deebo Samuel. And I think he's an interesting later target in your rookie drafts. But the key difference between him and Deebo Samuel is Deebo Samuel coming out of college was a good wide receiver, like in a traditional sense still. Malachi Corley is not that right now. He is a fun player. I think that is when you watch his tape, when you watch him on film, he's fun. Like, just what he does with the ball is exceptional, but he needs to improve as a route runner. He has the tools, he has the footwork to make it work at the next level. It's really just going to depend on development and landing spot with a team that's willing to get creative while they utilize him. Moving on to wide receiver 9, it is Adonai Mitchell out of Texas, and admittedly, he is one of my favorite players in this draft. And I fully understand there are analytical problems with his profile. Like, you cannot look at him and say, he is a perfect prospect, right? He's going to have a low BMI. He is one of these taller, skinnier wide receivers that we have a ton of in this draft. At least based on, what he's listed at, he's right around 24, like a 24.0 BMI, which is not ideal. You obviously want to see him closer to 27 if possible. In addition to that, the yards per team pass attempt, right? How productive was he when you kind of take away just volume stats, essentially? He was sub 2, like below 2.0. Again, you want them to be significantly higher, right? The best wide receivers in this class, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabers, are up over 3-4 yards per team pass attempt. And finally, you really didn't see him break out in college until he was already 20 years old. So he doesn't have that early breakout age that we are obviously looking for with a lot of different players, especially at the wide receiver position. So there's red flags. But I think his play style is going to translate. Again, he is an above average deep threat, a player that when you get him moving and you get him down the field, he can track the ball well. He's not a necessarily go up and get it type of guy, which I think is interesting given, again, his size, where he kind of wins on the field. You would think or would expect him to be better in contested catch situations. He's not going to do that, at least right now. But the good thing is he's still an above average route runner. Does he have a full route tree? No, because I think it's difficult for guys at his height to be consistent all-around elite route runners. Now, the next two guys in Tier 4, I don't think people are expecting to see in Tier 4. And I give a shout-out to Addison on this one because he's talked me off of Keon Coleman. That's who we're going to next year. Keon Coleman is a highlight reel player. There is no doubt about it, right? Like, you throw the ball up, he's likely to come down with it if it's a contested catch. If he has guys draped all over him, he's going to make the spectacular play more often than not. The issue with Keon Coleman is basically everything else. He is not a burner, right? For his size, his weight, he doesn't need to be, but he's not a guy that is going to take the top off a defense over and over and over. And given his play style, that's kind of a problem because he's not an elite route runner. He is not a nuanced player between the hashes, basically. Like, he's not gonna win on in-breaking and out-breaking routes. He's going to bully you off the line and probably win deep. That's where he needs to kind of make his name in the NFL, I think. The good news is, if you can get him the ball, when you do get him the ball, he's damn near impossible to tackle. The man is a yak machine, which again points to his highlight reel status that people have thrown onto him. He's consistently making big plays when he gets the ball. The problem is he hasn't gotten the ball a ton in terms of like true volume. When you look at his dominator rating, right, he gets over 30%. But that's mostly on the back of touchdowns, which is kind of a problem, especially when you can look at like his team market share in terms of yards. He's never topped 20%. He's not a volume type of player. That is what concerns me with Keon Coleman. The upside's insane. That is what people are going to be drawn to. But the floor is a player that just does not contribute in 2 to 3 years. And I already said, right, people aren't expecting Xavier Worthy to be in tier 4, but that's where he lands for me, right? I have bounced back and forth, tier 3, tier 4. He's never been in the tier 2 conversation for me. And the reason is, like, there are problems with his profile. There's a lot to like, but there are absolutely things that just kind of you look at and say, what the hell's going on? What happened after his freshman year? Like, you're looking at a player who went over that 30% dominator rating as a freshman, had one of the best freshman seasons we've seen in a long time. Like, it looked like Xavier Worthy was on track to be a locked and loaded top 10, top 15 pick in the NFL draft, and he just never got better. He regressed as competition improved around him, right? He did not maintain the same type of production. When you added in, right, Jatavion Sanders, when you added in Adonai Mitchell, he never got back over that 30% mark in terms of dominator. He was good, but not great. And then when you factor in just the lack of consistency, the lack of effort that is littered across his tape, it just starts to bring up red flags. Those are the things we don't like. There's obviously a ton to like. That's why he is up at the top of tier 4, ahead of Keon Coleman, ahead of Mitchell, ahead of Corley. So when you talk about what you like, the dude's fast as hell. We like speed. Speed is fun. He is twitchy in the short areas of the field, right around the line of scrimmage. He is impressive. Like, that is where I think he is going to be a terror in the right situation, right? Underneath routes, and then using that speed to bait and win deep. Those are things you can hang your hat on immediately with Xavier Worthy. It's just, how does he hold up at the next level at his size? Is he able to handle the physicality? I don't know if that's going to be the biggest issue for him. I just think the lack of production is what I keep coming back to relative to expectations he set after his freshman year. In a vacuum, he has been perfectly solid. But what the hell changed? And if it's just competition, okay, I don't think that's necessarily a positive either. So Xavier Worthy has tools. He is a good route runner, again, the speed, the things we just talked about. All of that is there with his profile. But there's enough red flags that I just can't put him up in tier 3 with these other two guys. So we get to my wide receiver 5 at the bottom of tier 3. There's only two guys here. And again, this one, I owe Addison an apology. Once again, Troy Franklin. Troy Franklin, I was wrong about when I first went into scouting rookies this year, I think. And Addison was on this from the jump. Troy Franklin, while he's not a traditional build, again, the BMI guy, I'm not a BMI guy, but this class has a bunch of weird ones. He's right around 23. Like, that's where he's going to live. He reminds me of Robbie Anderson in that perspective, but I think he's a much better player all around. Like, as a route runner, he's going to come out and be one of the best route runners in this class. At his size, I think that is shocking. And also a huge nod to how effective he's going to be, I think, from day one, no matter where he lands. He's not going to be a situation-dependent guy because route running is going to translate. Speed, the ability to win off the line, all of that is immediately going to show at the next level. There's going to be zero questions. And as an early declare, he hits that 30% dominator that you're looking for elite wide receivers in year 3. So right as he's ready to hit the NFL, he's coming off of his best season. He has the tools, the skill set, the production to be a nightmare at the next level. Wherever he lands, and if it's end of the first, early to mid-second, he is going to be great at the NFL. And when it comes to rookie drafts, you have to start looking at him inside of the top 8, top 7 maybe, right? Like maybe after Brock Bowers is where I go to Troy Franklin, and then Brian Thomas, the other guy in tier 3 for me. But again, shout out to Addison on this one. He's turned my opinion here, and I'm all in on Troy Franklin. So at the top of tier 3 for me, it is Brian Thomas. And I think analytically, Brian Thomas checks a lot of the boxes, right? Early declare, he gets a 30% dominator rating. He has the height I'm looking for. Those are the things that he does incredibly well. If you want to knock him, and I think it's fair, you didn't see a ton of production year 1 and year 2. I do think this spike in production in year 3 is directly tied to Jayden Daniels. Obviously, one of the better deep ball throwers in college heading into the NFL here. And when you watch Brian Thomas, that tracks with what he does well almost immediately, right? For his size, he is an incredible deep threat. Again, he is very difficult to jam at the line, and then he uses that speed to basically just leave you in the dust. Brian Thomas was a match made in heaven with Jayden Daniels, and it showed. Well, I don't like having necessarily situation-dependent wide receivers this high. I think the physical tools and just where his expected draft capital has risen to, Brian Thomas is going to land in a spot that is just, it's a match made in heaven for him. So Brian Thomas, there's some flags, and admittedly, Troy Franklin probably has a good case to be ranked ahead of him, but I just cannot get away from the physical tools that Brian Thomas possesses. He is going to be a problem in 2024. Now, getting to tier 2 here, it is Rome Odunze. He is the only player in tier 2 for me, and that may be a surprise. It may be shocking. It may be confusing. I don't think it is. Rome Odunze is fantastic. I think he deserves to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. I don't have him with Malik Nabers. I don't have him with Marvin Harrison Jr. That's not to say he's not going to be damn good at the next level. There's really not much to nitpick with him. Like, if you want to poke holes in him, you can say he's not a burner, okay? Like, he doesn't have game-breaking speed at 6'3", 215. I don't think that matters. I don't think that is what stops him from being a great wide receiver at the next level. You look at a guy that is basically just one of the better route runners in the class, and at his size, that's just absurd. Like, yes, Troy Franklin is a similar size to him, but he doesn't have the weight that Rome Odunze has. Rome Odunze, the route running, again, for the scale, the mass of human he is just very confusing. He's a nuanced route runner that has fantastic footwork, finds ways to separate and basically use his frame to box guys out. So not only does he win off the line, if he does get into a contested catch situation, he has the catch radius and the frame to make most of those catches. He is going to be a quarterback's best friend at the next level because you can just throw the ball in his general vicinity and he's probably going to come down with it. Like, that is everything you see over and over and over when you watch him at Washington. And when his reception perception comes out, I cannot wait because I think it's just going to push him higher and higher away from guys in tier 3. I think there's a notable gap right now between Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabers, Rome Odunze, than Brian Thomas and Troy Franklin. I think those three are the only three guys you see taken in the top 15 in terms of wide receivers. So, tier 1. You weren't expecting to see Malik Nabers here. And again, I owe this to Addison. He is the one that I have to hear this consistently from him. And I've drank the Kool-Aid. I'm already high on Malik Nabers, but I don't think the gap between him and Marvin Harrison is as big as people think or as big as people are making it out to be. They're two nearly perfect prospects. I'm just going to talk about them together because what is there not to like? They both have one knock on each of them. Marvin Harrison Jr., his BMI is like 25. Don't care. Again, not a huge BMI guy for the most part. That's the most irrelevant thing in the world for somebody like Marvin Harrison Jr. And then Malik Nabers, you see over and over, he's not like a jump ball threat, okay? That's fine. I don't really care. Every time he touches the ball, it is a terrifying home run threat for the other team. Marvin Harrison Jr. on the other side is just an entirely different play style, but we've talked about him at length. There is nothing he does not do well, and at his size, it just doesn't make sense. He still is one of the best wide receiver prospects I think I've ever seen. And again, when I say Malik Nabers is not far behind him, I truly mean that. Malik Nabers probably would have been the wide receiver 1 in 3 of the last 6, 7 classes, maybe something like that. Like, he just happens to run into an absolute superstar in Marvin Harrison Jr. If you can leave your draft with either of them, again, whether it's you take him at 101, 102, 103, 4, 5, whatever, wherever they end up slotting in, that's a win. They are absolute superstars in the making, guys that I think will be locked and loaded like top 5 dynasty wide receivers. Maybe not by the end of their rookie year, but in year 2, I'd be shocked if they are both not there. All right, guys, that is it. If you have questions, you have comments, drop them down below. At some point, we'll get into tier 5, tier 6 wide receivers as well. So as always, thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next time.